Hello, I'm Bob the Booker and welcome to my channel. And today I just wanted to talk about the Women's Prize shortlist, which we now have. And it's one of those things, you'll have noticed I had a video scheduled for yesterday morning. And it was one of those things where I had seen that the Women's Prize shortlist was coming up soon and somehow hadn't put the dates together. So literally the exact same time the Women's Prize shortlist is announced, there's me being like, the 1999 Booker Prize. So that wasn't intended as like a competition thing to it. It was more just like, oh, I entirely got my times wrong. And by the time I also realized I was going to be on a train to Birmingham for work, and was like, I don't think the people on this train would really appreciate me recording a whole video of me live reacting to the Women's Prize shortlist. And or I don't think it would have also made for a good place to film a video anyway, just because the background noise of like, the next stop is Coventry wouldn't have been quite as fun for everyone involved. Anyway, that long preamble out the way. We have a shortlist for this, for the Women's Prize. So let's get talking a little bit about what that is. So of this shortlist, I have read 3 of the books that are up so far, and the other 3 are ones that I was already looking forward to reading. One of them, Brotherless Knight, is one that I started and then actually I ran out of time on my audiobook at the library, and now I'm kind of wondering if I should have just, kind of wishing I'd spent a bit more time kind of focusing on that earlier on. Anyway, but this is a really interesting set of 6 books, and hopefully I'm aiming to do solo videos for each one of those books, and a few of them are books that were ones I absolutely have adored as well. So this is a very good list for me in that sense. First up, we have Anne Enright with The Wren. I love this. I think Anne Enright's writing is so spectacular. It's so punchy. She just has this really incredible way with words, I think, and with this very strong kind of voice that comes through. This book is sort of largely about a mother and her daughter, and the ways that they interact with each other and the ways that they sort of do and don't understand each other. I think it's really, really beautiful. Carrying on with the ones I've read, we have Claire Kilroy's Soldier Sailor. Ignore the sort of cup mark. I don't know how that happened. Well, I mean, from a cup, but I don't remember putting a cup on this. Soldier Sailor by Claire Kilroy is a book that focuses on also a mother, and in this case, a mother sort of dealing with her young son and trying to just get through motherhood in some ways. It's, she has an incredibly difficult time. But I just think the voice of this book is so punchy and real. It's so beautifully written. It's got a lot of joy and humour in it alongside some of the darker things. And I just think it's such a brilliantly observed book, both in terms of the sort of dialect and the dialogue, but also just in terms of the kind of the ways that this woman sees the world as well. And we move along. The third one that I've read from the list so far is River East, River West. And actually the fun thing is I was at a book event on Tuesday night, so the night before the shortlist announcement, and this is a book by Aube Lescure, that I think is just a really interesting one in terms of how it talks about place. It largely also focuses on a mother and a daughter, and particularly a sort of almost an inversion of a typical expat story, of instead of, or moving culture kind of story. So instead of looking at somebody moving to the West, it kind of looks at somebody trying to understand what it's like when they move to China and have to kind of find a way of understanding who they are and all of those sorts of things. I think it's really well done, and its sense of place is really interesting. The author on this panel mentioned a lot about this, the sort of the ways that things can be sort of flipped in terms of how we think of various parts. So River East, River West references the sort of 2 parts of Shanghai, but actually, for one city in this novel, Dandong, it's right on the border with North Korea and China. It's in China, but on the border with North Korea. And for people there, the river depends, obviously if you're in North Korea, the river is in one direction. If you're in China, the river's to another direction. That is the natural border between the two. And so this book sort of plays with some of those ideas as well. And I think it's just a really interesting book. So the three I've not read, are ones actually I was hoping to read anyway. So I've already mentioned Brotherless Knight by V.V. Ganeshananthan, and this is a book that I think is it sounds really interesting in terms of the ways that it tells the sort of Sri Lankan story of kind of just sort of war tearing people apart and various other kind of complications and all these sorts of things kind of coming into the narrative. And it sounds really good and really interesting, and I'm excited to get stuck in and get reading it. Isabella Hammad's Enter Ghost, which is a book that I've heard a lot of people talk about, and it sounds like a really interesting one of a Palestinian woman holding a sort of a production of, I believe it was Hamlet, and the sort of the ways that that sort of speaks to various sort of parts within that struggle and that conflict there as well, but also just more generally a sort of broader story about love and about trauma and about various other things. And last but not least, Kate Grenville's Restless Dolly Maunder, which the judges kept on making a point of talking about being very funny. And so to an extent where I'm like, I don't know, I find it really funny the words that they use to talk about some of these books, because there are some books where people really go in and they're like, this expansive, epic, heartfelt story, and some where they're like, this book is very funny. And you're like, okay. But actually it does sound very good, and I think Kate Grenville, I believe, is a former winner of the prize as well, so also fun to have her in it in that sense. I'm really just delighted, if nothing else, to see Soldier Sailor here on this list. This is one of my favourite books of last year, and I don't know, I was just really surprised it never got a Booker nod. It just felt like it was ripe territory for that. But anyway, so that's the book I'm currently rooting for, having not really read, having only read half, but I'm really excited to read the rest of these. I'm a little upset, well, not upset is a bit strong for this. I would have loved to have seen In Defense of the Act by Effie Black make this list, because I thought that was exceptional. I thought that was a really, really well done book. I've not read a great deal of the other long-listed books, but Chetna Maru's Western Lane I thought was a really good book. I thought Ordinary Human Failings by Megan Nolan was also really interesting. So we shall see. I'll read the rest of these and report back. I'll do solo reviews on these, but regardless, interesting to see what's come up here. And I think such a range of books as well, not only books that are apparently very funny, but also these sort of, a few debuts, a few more established authors, just books that sort of seem to be about quite a broad range of topics, and I'm excited to see what comes from this. And we've got a little bit of time until the winner is announced anyway, so I'll be reading these and reporting back. But I'd love to hear from you which books you're delighted to have seen on this list, or ones that you've really read and loved. Yeah, apart from that, take care and speak to you all very soon. Bye bye.